So today we're checking out Metallica's monster track, Master of Puppets. The album version was recorded in standard tuning, so that's what the tutorial will be in today, is standard. So go ahead and get tuned up. And the track opens up with this. Okay, so we've got a few power chord stabs before we get into what's a repeating 4-bar riff. So we start with these power chords. Okay, so on the album, we have this higher voiced E power chord. Live, they just hit an open E power chord, so you can substitute that if you like. But the album version used this voicing where we have a low open E, 7th fret on the A string, 9th fret on D. Okay, then we jump down to the 10th fret on the low string, form a power chord off of that, and chromatically move it down to 9 and 8. So we're going to have D, D flat, C along the low string. Okay, also interesting to notice there that it's a 3-string power chord, that final one that we hit there. So you'll get a little mini bar with your pinky on the A and the D string to get those 3 to ring like it is on the album. Okay, so we start with that. And then we get into our 4-bar repeating riff. The first 2 measures sounds like this. Okay, so we're really just chromatically hitting every note along the low E string. Okay, so we're going to palm mute all the open E's and then take the palm mute off for the fretted notes. Okay, so 2 palm mutes on E, then hit the 12th fret. 2 palm mutes on E, hit the 11th fret. 2 palm mutes on E, do that same chromatic power chord movement that we had a second ago. Okay, so there's the first half of the riff, nice and slow. The second half of the riff. Okay, 2 palm mutes on the low E, hit the 7th fret. 2 palm mutes hit the 6th. 2 palm mutes hit the 5th. From here, we'll have 1 palm mute to the 4th. 1 palm mute to the 3rd. 1 palm mute to 1. Okay, and the 2nd and the 1st frets, those are the only fretted notes where we're going to keep the palm mute on. Okay, so the second half of this riff, nice and slow. Okay, let's put the whole thing together nice and slow. Okay, and that repeats 4 times exactly like that. And then we get into the next riff. Okay, that one. But before we get into that and break it down, let's put this whole very intro together with some scrolling tab at a slower pace so that you can follow along. Here we go with that. And now we get into what I would consider the main riff of the song. It's a pretty good down picking workout. Let's do a performance of the rest of the intro and then we'll break it all down. So this main riff is once again very chromatic. Let's cover exactly how it is on the album first, and then after I'll very briefly touch on a couple of things that I think might be worth mentioning that they do live with it. So James does vary it a little bit from the way it is on the album live. Okay, so it's a 4-measure thing that starts, and the first couple measures go like this. Okay, so what we're going to do is repeatedly hit open and 1 on the low E string, and then we'll be chromatically moving a note on the A string. So open 1 on the low E, and then up to 2 on A. Notice how we want to palm mute the notes on the low E, taking that palm mute off for the notes on the A string to really make them pop. Okay, now we go open 1 on E again, up to 3 on A. Then open 1 up to 4 on A. Open 1 back to 3 on A. And then open 1, hit the 2nd fret on the A string twice. Okay, so let's put that together nice and slow. Okay, now the next couple of measures. Okay, so we start off the same. Open 1 up to 2 on A. Open 1 up to 3. But here we reverse the order. We go back to the low E, but we go 1 open rather than open 1. Okay, and then we have these sliding power chords, which is a G power chord, 3rd fret of the low E string, and just slide that a half a step down to the F sharp. Palm mute an E, and do it again. And do a slide one more time. Okay, so. Okay, let's put those 4 measures together nice and slow. Now we play them again, exactly the same. Okay, now after those 4 measures have played twice, we extend the riff and it really becomes an 8-measure riff. And then we play the 8-measure riff twice as well. So let's, out of all of the 8 measures that's coming up though, there's only 1 measure that's different. That's the 4th measure in. So let's play the next 4 measures that are coming up. It goes like this. Okay, as you can see, there's a little variation on the end there. So the first couple measures, exact same as the way we started the riff before. Now here's the variation. Okay, pretty much the same. We go open 1 up to 2, up to 3, up to 4, back to 3. And then from that point is where we reverse the low notes. 1 open with a B power chord stab to end that phrase off. Okay, so here's those couple measures with the variation again, nice and slow. Okay, then the next 4 measures, exact same as the 4 measures that we learned before. Now we play those 8 all over again. Now double those slides up. And then Hammett comes in. Okay. So those slides are just doubled up. Same measure, just do it twice. Okay. Then we go to this little fill here that Hammett's got. And it's a low open E, 7th fret on A, 8th fret on D. Okay. And you do that 5 times. Try to get a pinch harmonic on that final note if you can. If you need to brush up on pinch harmonics, I'll put a link to a tutorial that I did in the description for you. Okay, now one brief little thing to mention about that little fill is it's a little trickier because we've got 3 strings that we're down picking through. So if you're really having a hard time with that, I see a lot of people move those pitches on the A and the D string down a string set. So it's not the way that Kirk does it, but if you're really having trouble down picking fast through 3 strings, you could play the 12th fret on the low string and the 13th fret on A. So it would be open 12, 13 like this. Okay. That might help you through that part, just if you're really struggling with the 3-string positioning of it. Okay, so that's the riff the way it appears on the album. Let's just briefly talk about a couple of things live. Now, the first couple of rotations where we just have that 4 measures that repeats, that's where I see the variations as I was researching this and watching live footage. That's where James will kind of do his own thing there and changes it up. Now, they played this on the Howard Stern show a couple of years ago, so a very clear shot of a variation that James played. So I thought I'd throw that at you here just so you can kind of get a feel for some of the things that you'll come across when you watch live footage. So he does that first rotation through. Okay, so as you can see, it's slightly different. It's one of these little variations that you're going to come across. He starts off the same. And then, okay, so he's got open 1 up to 2. Then he immediately reverses 1 open. Then he has like this F power chord that he hits and pulls off to open strings with another E palm mute in there. Then the slides. Okay, so that's a variation, and I'm sure that you can come across more of them, but that's the kind of thing that he likes to do live. And I think another cool thing that they do live is they introduce a 1-beat pause on the second rotation. So it's like this. Right? So there's that 1-beat pause. That's pretty cool. It makes those slides really pop out. But anyways, that is the riff. I'm sure that you can come up with more variations. You'll probably see them if you watch enough live footage, but that's the gist of it. That's what the riff is. So I don't want to spend a lot of time going over every possible thing that you're going to see. But now that we've went through the whole riff, let's slow it down with some scrolling tabs so you can follow along. And then we get into the verse, so here's a playthrough of that. So a lot of low E string chugging on this verse riff. Starts off like this. Okay, so there's 9 chugs on that low E to start with, but if you know my tutorials, then you know that I prefer counting. So it's 4.5 beats of eighth notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and. So that first power chord is coming in on the end of beat 1 on the second measure. That's why we have the 9 chugs. Okay, and then when we hit our power chords. Okay, so we have the 3rd fret G power chord. sliding up a whole step to the 5th fret A. Then we hit another E palm mute, doing a 6th fret B flat power chord back down to the 5th fret A. And then repeat that 3rd fret to 5th fret. Okay, so the first half of that riff, nice and slow. Okay, then we repeat our chugs for the second half. And now we have 2 octave slides to end the riff. So back to the 3rd fret on the low string. This time with your pinky though, skip a string, go up to the D string, 5th fret. So then we'll have the A string just naturally muted off in between these 2 G notes that we have that are an octave apart. Okay, and we're going to slide both fingers up a whole step to the 5th fret and the 7th fret. Do 2 slides there, and that's the whole riff. Okay, so nice and slow. Now, the only thing that I want to briefly touch on is that measure with the sliding octaves. I have it notated as a measure of 3/4 because on the album, I think it's closer to a measure of 3/4 than 5/8. But in reality, it's actually not a measure of 3/4 or 5/8. It's kind of in the middle. It's like a rushed measure of 3/4. Okay, so on the album, there's a gap between those 2 slides, like how I've showed you. Right, a little bit of a ever so slight break in between those slides. Live though, they've pretty much completely done away with that little pause and they've turned it into a measure of 5/8 more than a measure of 3/4. Like live, they would play it. Right? There's like no gap in between those slides. So it's something that's kind of changed with their playing over the years or how they do it live versus the album. But, you know, it's just something to be aware of. It's really more of a feel thing than a counting thing. So anyways, there's that riff, and we play that twice to end the intro, and then the vocals start, and we play it 4 more times for the verse. And then to finish the verse off, we do what's basically transposing the riff up a whole step, and we play it like this. Okay, so same overall concept. Start on the F sharp power chord of the low string 2nd fret. And now you can fret the full power chord, but really on the album, you're only hearing that bottom string, the 2nd fret going. But again, we have the 9 chugs. Okay, and then we come up to an open A and D, hammering to a B power chord. So that's the 2nd fret of the A string, 4th fret of the D. Okay, and then we go up a half step to the C power chord on the 3rd fret, slide it back down to B, and then repeat the open A and D to the hammering onto the B power chord. So far we've got this. Okay, then repeat the chugs. And then just repeat those open A and Ds, hammering to the B power chord twice. And that's the riff, you know, basically transposed up a whole step. So nice and slow. Then we repeat that riff again. And then we're getting into our pre-chorus, and that's preceded just with 1 measure of straight chugging on that B power chord. And again, you can fret the full B power chord, but on the album, you're really only hearing the 2nd fret on the A string, and that's just straight 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then into our pre-chorus, which we will tackle in the next section. But since we've broken the whole verse down, let's play that nice and slow with some scrolling tab. The next section is the pre-chorus, and here's a playthrough of that. The pre-chorus riff is a 4-measure riff that we play 4 times, except the very last measure on the 4th time is slightly different. It has a harmony guitar line there. But let's talk about this 4-measure rotation. Starts like this. Okay, so we start with an E power chord on the 7th fret of the A string, hit that, and then 3 more chugs on the low E string. Drop that power chord a whole step to the 5th fret D, back up to the 7th fret E. Okay. Now we have this. Okay, now I see a lot of people play this where they remain in position and they use their 3rd and their pinky fingers. No, nothing wrong with that, but that's not the way Metallica plays it, so I'll just show you the fingering that they use. So we start with on the 7th fret of the A string and then slide up to the 9th of A. Now you want to roll that first finger to get the 9th on D, to 10 on A, and then you'll pick the 9th fret on A and then quickly hammer down onto the 10th fret. And that note is held for 2 beats, so there's time to get a nice vibrato on that. Okay, so that's the first 2 measures of the riff. Let's play that slow. Now we get into some chugging, goes like this. Okay, so again, with all of these chugging power chords, you really just hear the low string, but you can hold the full power chord. So we're going to start on the 7th fret of the low string B, hit that 4 times. Go up a half step to C, back to the 7th fret B. Okay, then come back up to the 8th fret C, hit that 4 times. Then we have, okay, so that's the 6th fret on A, that power chord, D sharp. Back to the 7th fret B on the low string. And that's our 4-measure rotation. Let's put that together nice and slow. Okay, and like I said, we play that 4 times for the pre-chorus, but the very last measure on the 4th rotation is a harmony guitar line. So I'll just play the 4th rotation in its entirety. Okay, so as you can see, it's all the same except for that very last measure. And this is the lower harmony that's typically played by James live. So we'll cover that first. It's 9-7-6 on A, and then 6 on A, 8-7 on E. Okay. And then Kirk plays a 3rd higher. He starts on the 7th fret of D, coming down to 10 and 9 on A, and then 9-7-6 on A. Okay, so you put those 2 pitches together, it's like, okay, then we have 2 E power chord stabs, and then F power chord on the 1st fret, 2 stabs. And then we're into the chorus, which we'll cover in the next section, of course. So now that we went through the pre-chorus, let's slow it down with some scrolling tab for you. Now we have to talk about the chorus, so here's a playthrough of that before we break it down. So it's an oddly structured chorus, which might make it a little bit harder for you to memorize it, but none of it's that difficult to play, thankfully. So we start off with this phrase. Okay, so that's an open E power chord followed by 3 E chugs. Then we're going to go up, stab the F sharp on the 2nd fret of the E string, followed by 3 more E string chugs. Ending on a G power chord 3rd fret. Okay, 2nd phrase. Okay, so that starts on C, the 3rd fret of the A string, followed by 3 open A chugs. Moving down half step to B, stab that, 3 more A chugs. Ending with an open A power chord. So that phrase, nice and slow. Okay, next phrase. Okay, a little bit more hopping here. Up to the 5th fret on the A string D, stab that, immediately jump down to the 3rd fret on the low string, the G. Okay, so we're going to chug that G 3 times. Now you have to hop up to the 3rd fret on the A string, stab a C power chord, back down to that G for 3 more chugs. Then hop to a B power chord, 2nd fret of A. Okay, so as you can see, quite a bit of hopping there. So I'll play that slow. Now, next phrase. Okay, a little bit easier. We're just taking a power chord shape down the A string. Start on the 7th fret, E, stab that, and then 3 chugs on the low E. Bring the power chord down a whole step to the 5th fret, D, followed by 3 more E string chugs. And then come down another whole step to the 3rd fret, C. So that phrase, nice and slow. Now let's just finish the chorus off in one big chunk since there's some repetition going on here. It goes like this. Okay, we're back to those E and F power chord stabs that we got into the chorus with. And then we're back on an E power chord, 3 chugs. Okay, stab that F sharp on the 2nd fret, 3 more chugs on the open E. Up to C on the 3rd fret of A. Followed by those E and F stabs again. Okay, so let's just put that ending of the chorus together nice and slow. Okay, there's the chorus for you. Let's put the whole thing together with some scrolling tab. So after a second verse and chorus, we get into the next section that we have to talk about, which is the clean section. So here's a quick playthrough of that riff for you. So the trickiest thing with this clean section is keeping everything sounding nice by having everything ring as much as possible. So the correct fingering for these chord shapes is going to be essential. So let's go through the chord shapes that we're using first of all, because for the most part, what we're doing is holding a chord shape and then arpeggiating it. So we'll hold the chord shape and then just pick certain strings out of that chord that we're holding down. So we're starting with an E minor, and then we're going to go up to a D. And it's good to know too that with this D, if you lift your second finger off of that high E string, you have a D sus2. So we're playing with that idea in this riff of a D sus2 going to a D major. And then we're going to flip to a C add 9. After that is going to be an A sus2. And then a good old B7 will get you through the rest of this progression. Okay, so we start off with the E minor to D, and here's how that goes. Okay, so let's break that down. Hold your E minor chord, and I do it with my middle two fingers, just like James does. And all that we're going to do is pick the E, A, D, G strings in that order, just straight up the chord. And that takes care of the E minor chord. Then we're going to take a D, but we're going to start with our second finger off. So we're holding a D sus2 to start with. And then we're going to go D string, G, B, back to the G. Now we're going to go up to the high string that's open, pick that, hammer your second finger down, and then pull it off to get that little trill. Okay, then we're going to come back to the B and the G string. Put your pinky down on the high string, the 3rd fret, as we flip to the C add 9 chord. Okay, so there's the E minor and the D, the first 2 chords of this progression. Let's put that together nice and slow. And now we're into the C add 9. Okay, so once you're holding that C add 9, we're going to pick that 3rd fret on the A string, followed by these strings, G, B, G, B, G. Down to the D string. Now lift and get an open B as you go to the A sus2. Okay, so that C add 9 measure, nice and slow. Now the A sus2. Okay, just 4 brief notes here on the A sus2. It's going to be the open A, the G and the B, back to the open A. Now to the B7. Okay, so take your B7 chord, but lift your pinky. We don't need the full chord. We're not going to play that high string, and we need our pinky free for our final note of the riff down on the bottom string. So take your B7, and we're going to start by going A string, G string, B string, and then up the 4 strings, A, D, G, B. And then use your pinky to hit the 3rd fret on the low E string, and then we can repeat it, starting with the E minor. Okay, so let's put the A sus and the B7 together. Goes like this. Okay, there's the whole riff. Let's put it together nice and slow for you. And there's the riff. You just repeat that the same every repetition. Now live, I just want to talk about this briefly because there's a couple of things that he does live and he does it pretty consistently that I think is worth talking about. For instance, when we go from the A sus to the B7, he double picks that open A as he makes that transition. Okay, so with the A sus, we're playing everything the same. And then double pick that open A before you flip to the B7. He does that consistently. And And another thing that he likes to do a lot is that final note that we're playing on the 3rd fret of the low E string with our pinky. He bends that. Just a slight little quarter step bend. He likes to do that as well. So I'll just play the rotation once here with that little variation in there, and then we'll play it with some scrolling tab. Okay, let's put that riff together with some scrolling tabs so you can follow along. Now, the next thing we have coming up are the harmony guitar lines, but right before that is a very brief melodic line that Kirk plays, and he uses his volume knob to swell into each note. It has a very string-like effect. So before we talk about the harmony guitars, let's quickly talk about this melodic line. Now, the last couple of notes on the album are harmonized, but I'll just play through the notes that to my ear are the most prominent on the album first. Okay, so Kirk does this. Okay, so let's go over the notes first before we talk about the volume effect and all that. So this is all on the A string, and we're going to go 7, 9, 10 to start with. And then we go 12, 14, 9, 7. Okay, now let's talk about the how to get that string-like effect. What you do is you're going to hammer down out of nowhere with your fretting hand. So you're not going to pick the note. You're just going to sound the string by hammering your finger down. Now start with your volume knob rolled off, and when you hammer down onto the string, at the same time, roll the volume knob up. You can give a little vibrato to these notes as well. So 7, 9, 10. Then 12, 14, 9, 10. Okay, so that's to my ears, the most prominent pitches. Now there's a second guitar that doubles that, and it's the same except for the final 2 notes where we're going to go up to the 13th and the 14th frets on the D string. So the second guitar, go 7, 9, 10. And then 12, 14. And then up to 13, 14 on D. And then the harmony lines come in. Okay, so I'll just play that second guitar as well, nice and slow for you. So there's the second guitar part as well for that little melodic line. And Kirk does favor playing that second part live. He goes up to the D string, hits the 13th fret, and then hops into his harmony line. Okay, so let's talk about the harmony lines now. And we'll start with the lower one that's typically played by James live, and then we'll cover Kirk's after. Here we go with a performance of that. Okay, this harmonized line is based largely around triads found within the E minor scale. There's a little bit of E harmonic minor at the end as well. So we start with this. Okay, and we're actually starting on an E minor triad. So 17th fret on B, 19 and 15 on the E string, back down to 17 on B. Now up to 17 and 14 on the high E string, down to 15 on B. Let's put those two arpeggios together. Now we have this. So we're on the 15th fret of B. We're going to triple pick that up to 17 and 14 on the E string, down to 15 on B again. Then up to 15 and 12 on the high E string, down to 13 on B. Okay, let's put everything together that we've got so far. Now we've got. So we're on that 13th fret of B, triple pick that, up to 15 and 12 on high E, back down to 13 on B. Now we're going to pick 14 on the high string, then, so it's pick 12, hammer onto 14, back off to 12, and then slide down to 11. Okay. And now we're going to end this. Okay, so that's coming down to the B string, 13, 12, 13, slide up to 15, back to 13. And then go up to the high E, 11, 12, sliding up to 14, 15. And then you can hop and start it all over at the 17th fret on the B string again. So that last little bit. Okay, let's put the whole thing together one time nice and slow for you. Okay, there's the complete harmony line. Now we play that twice, and then a solo comes in, and then we play it again twice after the solo. So we play that harmonized line exactly the same 4 times. However, the 4th time, so we play the solo plays, and then we come back in for 2 rotations. And the 2nd time, the 4th and final time, we play this line. There's one little extra trill that they've put in there. So I'll just play the line so you can see the difference. So that 4th and final time is going to look like this. Okay, so I don't know if you caught that, but we start the same. Now it's right here. Okay, there's an extra little hammer and pull between the 14th and the 17th fret there before we go down to our next arpeggio. Okay, so that's triple picking that 15th fret up to 17, and then put that little hammer pull between 14 and 17 in there before you continue on the same as before. Okay, so now that you've kind of located where the difference is, I'll just play that rotation nice and slow for you. So as you can see, nothing else is different, just that one little trill put in that 4th and final time that that line plays. Okay, let's put the whole line together a few times with some scrolling tab at a slower tempo for you. And now here's a playthrough of the higher harmony. Okay, so Kirk plays this higher harmony live. It's a third higher than the one that James does, lower. And once again, it's based off of triads found in the E minor scale. So it starts with this. Okay, 20 on B, 22, 19 on E, back down to 20 on B. 20, 17 on the high E to 19 on B. Okay, let's put those two arpeggios together. Now we have, so we're on that 19th fret on B, triple pick that. 20, 17 on the high string. Back to 19 on B. And then 19, 15 on the E string, down to 17 on B. Okay. Let's put the whole line together so far. Continuing on. Okay, so we're on that 17th fret on B, triple pick that. Up to 19 and 15 on E, back down to 17 on B. 17 on the high string. Then, so pick 15, hammer to 17, pulling back off to 15, then sliding down to 14. Okay. Finishing it off. Okay, so that's coming down to the B string. 17, 16, 17, slide up to 19, back to 17. Then up to the high E string, 14, 15, sliding to 17, 19. And then you can hit the 20th fret on the B string to repeat it all. So let's put that whole line together nice and slow. Okay, and once again, that line is going to play 4 times in total. We play it twice, and then the nice little melodic solo comes in, and then we play it twice more after the solo. And once again, that 4th and final time that we play it, it has that little extra trill. So that's going to be located in the same spot in the riff. Okay, so slowing that down for you, we start the same. Triple picking that 19th fret up to 20, and then, so that little extra hammer pull in the riff is right there between 17 and 20. Okay, so nice and slow again. Okay, other than that, that 4th and final time is the same, just that little extra hammer pull. Okay, so let's slow that higher harmony down with some scrolling tab for you, and then we can move on into the solo. And now we're up to the first solo of the song, so here's a playthrough of that. So this is one of the few solos that James plays. Now, it's not too difficult to pull off, but there are a couple of quick position shifts and melodic jumps that keep things interesting. So let's take a look at the first phrase. Okay, so start on the 17th fret of B, then play 17, 19, 20. Then we have, okay, so that's repeating 19 and 20 on B, up to 17 on the high E string, back to 2019 on B. Okay, now you're going to want to roll your second finger there up to the 19th fret on the high string, come back down to the B string. Okay, so that's a hammer and pull between 17 and 20 on the B string. So pick 17, hammer to 20, pull back off to 17. Ending on the 17th fret with a nice vibrato on the G string. Okay, so let's put that phrase together slow. Okay, now we have this. Okay, so this is our first position shift. After we've played that 17th fret on G, shift back so that you can bend the 15th fret on B with your third finger. Okay, and you just want to pick it once, bend, release, bend, release. And then we're up to the high E string, 15, 14, down to 12 on B. Repeat that 15, 14 on the high E string. And then a hammer pull between 12 and 15 on B. Okay, and then we have this quick little hammer between 12 and 14 on the G string, and then an oblique bend. So what we're doing is we're playing 15 on the B string with our pinky, and then bending the 14th fret on the G string with our third finger. So hold that B string down with your pinky, and then we're just bending the G string. And it's the same thing that we did with the 15th fret on the B string a second ago, where we bend, release, but only pick it that first time. And then pull off to the 12th fret on G with your third finger. Now, technically, too, the second time that you bend that, you want to go a little bit higher. It's almost a step and a half on the recording. If that was intentional or not, I don't know, but that's the way it is. So bend, release, pulling off to the 12th fret. Down to 14 on D, back up to the G string 12, ending on the 14th fret of D. Okay, so let's put that phrase together slow. Now we have okay, so you'll want to get the 12th fret on D and the 12th fret on G, both with your first finger. Quick little pull off between 14 and 12 on the G string. Shifting back to the 11th fret on G, down to 12 on D. Okay. Back up to 14 and 12 on G. Hammer pull between 11 and 12. Making another quick position shift to the 10th fret on D, and you'll want to play that with your second finger to prepare yourself for the next little run. Okay, so let's put that phrase together. Now, ending the solo. Okay, so we're on that D string, 10th fret with our second finger. Now, palm mute the 12th fret on A, back up to 9 and 10 on D. Now, stay on the D string, 9, 10, 12, 10, 12, 14. Now, we're going to go up to the G string, play 11 and 12, and do both those notes with your first finger so that we're shifting into position to finish this off. Then roll that first finger up to the 12th fret on B, back to the 12th fret of G. Okay, so let's just put that together so that we're on the same page. Up to 15 and 14 on the E string. Hammer pull between 11 and 12 on that E string. Down to 12 on B. 14 on G. Sliding up to 19 on the high string. and ending on the 17th fret of the B string. So that's the same note that we started the solo with. Okay, so let's play that last phrase. Okay, there's the whole solo. Let's put it together with some scrolling tab. So after the solo, the harmony guitars come back in, which we've already covered. So the next section that we have to talk about is the bridge. Here's a playthrough of that, and then we'll break it down. So we're starting with the riff that we covered in the clean section. Now we have distortion on it though. So the thing to note is which notes are we putting a palm mute on and which notes are we taking the palm mute off. So let's just go chord by chord. The E minor, we're going to palm mute the first three notes, taking the palm mute off for the open G string. Okay, coming to the D, palm mute the first four notes and then take the palm mute off for the rest of the measure. Flipping to the C add 9, just take the palm mute off of any note that's going to be on the B string. And that goes for the A sus2 and the B7 section as well. Any note on the B string, just take the palm mute off. And then repeat it. Okay, then we get to two measures of straight chugging on an open E power chord. So it's 16 hits in total, but you should be thinking 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and gradually take the palm mute off at the end of those two measures. Now you think that that'd be really simple, but a couple of things I want to talk about there. Number one, we want a super heavy palm mute on the rest of this bridge starting here on these E chugs. We want it super chunky, okay? And you're going to get that real chunky, heavy sound with a heavy palm mute. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is if you watch James play it live, he does it very consistently where he's also muting in between each hit with his fretting hand. So it looks like this. Okay, now I tried to duplicate that when I was recording it. I played with it, but I couldn't get it to sound like the album. I don't think he was doing that on the album. It just sounds to me like he was just straight chugging on an E, nothing fancy there. But it's something I bring up since he does do that consistently live. I like nuance. I like to get in the artist's head. It might be something that you want to experiment with there on those two measures. Okay, but really it's just straight chugging on an E power chord for two measures. Slowly take the palm mute off at the end. Then we get into the next riff, which is the full bridge riff. Okay, again, heavy palm mute on this. We're going to start on an F sharp, second fret of the low string. Hit that twice. Go up half a step to G, hit that once. Back to the F sharp for 3 hits. Back up to the G for 1 hit. And then use your second finger to grab the 4th fret on the A string and double pick that. Okay, so 2 hits on that 4th fret. So that's our first measure. And we take the palm mute off for that 4th fret there too. So our first measure, nice and slow. Second measure is the same except for the last half of a beat. Okay, it's the exact same measure, except instead of double picking that 4th fret on the A string, we jump up and play that 4th fret power chord. So C sharp, 4th fret of the A string, just jump up, quick stab on that. So there's the riff, nice and slow for you. And we play that twice, and then the vocals start, and we play it another 4 times. However, the end of that 4th time, it changes because we're getting into the tempo change and then into the solo. So the final time, it would be the 6th time, if you're just counting total times that we play that riff. The 6th and final time we play that riff, the ending looks like this. Okay, so we start off the same first measure. And then the first 2 beats here are the same. 2 hits on F sharp, 1 on G, back to F sharp. Now we take our palm mute off, strum that F sharp twice, up to G, up to our 4th fret C sharp power chord there on the A string, back to a G power chord. And that's where our tempo changes, so hold that for 2 full measures. Then down to the F sharp, hold that for 1 measure. Pick slide and a random slide there. So you do a pick slide, which is really just putting the edge of the pick on the 2 or 3 bottom strings, sliding down with it, get that scraping sound, and then there's also just a random slide in there. Okay, so let's just play that last rotation of the bridge riff into those power chords and tempo change. Okay, so now that we've covered the whole bridge, let's slow it down with some scrolling tab. And now we get into the main solo of the song. Let's quickly talk about the rhythm underneath that first. It's the verse progression. So it's really like we're just soloing over a verse. So we take that verse riff and we play that 4 times, followed by what would be transposing it up a whole step, starting on the F sharp 2nd fret. And we play that twice, followed by that 1 measure of chugging on the B 2nd fret of the A string. So it's really just like going through a full verse, and then that leads us into that next riff that happens after the solo. Okay, so that is all the rhythm under the solo is doing. Like I said, just a verse, so nothing new there. And now let's do the solo itself. Here's a playthrough of that before we break it down. So the solo starts off with this. Okay, so it's a repeating 2-beat triplet phrase. We really have 6 notes that we have to learn here. It's a 17 to 12 pull off on the high string, down to 13 on B, then stay on B, 12, 13, up to 12 on E. Okay, so there's the 6 notes. Okay, now we're going to play that 3 times. On the fourth time, we're just going to play the 15th fret on the high E string, pulling off to 12 rather than 17 to 12. So 15 to 12, and then all the other notes are the same. Okay, so there's the first 4 repetitions through that. Now do that all over again. Except for that 4th time where we go 15 to 12, we're only going to play the first 3 notes of that phrase. And then we have a slide into a little trem-picked descending line. Okay, so let's just put that whole first phrase together nice and slow. Now we have... Okay, so ending that first phrase, right, there's a slide up the B string. I do that slide with my second finger, the same finger that I hit the last note of that first phrase with. And then skip to the 19th fret on the E string with my pinky, where I start the trem pick descending line. So like I said, it's a trem pick line. You don't have to worry about hitting any of these frets a certain number of times. Just pick fast and descend down through these frets. 19, 17, 15, 14. And then go back up to 17, 15, 14, down to 15 on B. Ending with a 17th fret on B. Okay, and that's a bend, release, bend. Okay, so let's put both of those first phrases together just because they kind of flow into each other. Okay, now we get into the phrase where he yanks the string off the fretboard by accident on the recording and kind of goes like this. Okay, that's what happened on the recording. It's very hard to get that to sound exactly like it was on the recording. The recording really was a happy accident that they just decided to leave, but we can approximate it and get pretty close. So I'll go over exactly what happened on the recording, and then we'll talk about what he was actually going for, because live, he just plays the idea that he was actually going for. He doesn't try to yank the string off the fretboard or anything like that. But on the recording, this is what you hear. So 17 to 15 to 14, pull off on the B string. Okay, now he went up to the E string and hit 17, and then that's when he yanked it off the fretboard. Okay, so you kind of hear that it goes higher there, and that's basically all you hear on that string. It kind of sounds like a slide on the recording. And then you hear back on the B string, 17, 15, 14, pull off again, ending on the G string, 16, 14. Okay, so once again, nice and slow on the recording, this is how it went. Okay, so now let's talk about the idea that he was going for, because live he still plays this idea, but of course he plays it without yanking the string off the fretboard. So all that he was going for was just doing that 17, 15, 14 pull off on the B, doing the same thing on the E, back down to the B, ending it with the 16 to 14 on G. Right, so it's just the same sequence of notes or the same sequence of frets on the top 2 strings, 17, 15, 14 on B, 17, 15, 14 on E, 17, 15, 14 on B, and then 16, 14 on G. Okay, that's what he was trying to do on the album, but just that happy little accident that's kind of sounded cool, so they kept it where the string was yanked off the fretboard. Okay, and then he slides that final note down, and you hear this. Okay, so the harmonic that he hits is between the 2nd and 3rd frets. You might have to hunt around in that fret, but just lightly touch the string until you find that pitch. Okay, and then what he does with the bar, if you wanted to duplicate it just like it is on the album, you know, it's not really necessary. You could just kind of do some whammy bar abuse there, but it's pretty easy to remember because he really just did 2 dips, pull the bar up, 2 more dips. So there's a bit of a pattern there. It's pretty easy to remember exactly the sequence. Okay, so that's what you'll do. Hit that harmonic, 2 dips, yank it up, 2 dips. Okay, something I wanted to talk about here is that live, he doesn't hit that open string harmonic. He plays the 4th fret on the G string and he bends that up a whole step. Right? The first, I pinched that 4th fret on the G string versus the open harmonic there. It's the same pitch. So you can get that same pitch with both those techniques, but I don't hear any string bending going on the album. To me, it just sounds like that pure open harmonic, and live he's just changed it, and lots of the time he doesn't even get a pinch on that. He's just messing around with that bending on the 4th fret there. Okay, so it's a little interesting fact there, though, that you can get that pitch in 2 different ways. But okay, after that harmonic, then we have. Okay, on the recording, it's a little bit sloppy here, but this is the idea that he was going for. So we're going to go on the G string, 2, 4. Now we bend the 4th fret on the G string, release, pulling off to 2, down to 4 on D, back up to 2 on G. And then we have, okay, so that's 4 to 2 pull off on G, down to 4 on D. 4 to 2 pull off on D, down to 4 on A. Back up to the D string, 2 to 4. Okay. Okay, let's put that whole thing together with the harmonic. Now we have. Okay, so that's sliding into the 10th fret on the E string with your pinky. So 10, 8, 7, down to 10 on B. Okay, back up to 8 and 7 on E, 10 and 8 on B. Stay on B, 7, 8, 10, up to 7 on E. Okay, there's that whole phrase. Okay, now we have. Into our unison bend phrase that climbs up the neck and finishes it. Okay, so this is all just a trem-picked line again. And on the album, there's nothing specific that you really have to duplicate 100%. You know, you're just going to trem pick. But there is a bit of a pattern to this. So once you understand the pattern, it makes this fairly simple. Okay, so we start off by trem picking the 7th fret. And this is all on the high E string. And then we're going to go 10, 8, 7 twice. Okay, and then we shift out of that up to the 8th fret. And whenever we do a position shift, we're leading that position shift with our first finger. So we do that 10, 8, 7 twice, lead into the 8th fret with your first finger, and then go 12, 10, 8 twice. Lead up to the 10th fret with your first finger and go 14, 12, 10 twice. Lead up to the 12th fret with your first finger. And now we're into our measure of 3, 4. So we only have time to do this pattern just the once, not twice like we've been doing. We go 15, 14, 12 just once. And then lead up to the 14th fret with our first finger where we're going to get into our final pattern. Okay. Okay, and remember that this is all just trem picking. You don't have to be super precise with only hitting these frets. It's just this general pattern that you're taking up, and you just keep that trem pick going and it's going to sound sweet. Okay, so let's put that whole little bit together so far. Okay, now when I got up to that final position, basically what the pattern is going 17, 16, 14, 19, 17, 14. Okay, we have those 6 notes, and we're going to play that 4 times. That's once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, getting into our final unison bend lick. Okay, but of course, again, we're trem picking, so we're not just getting 17, 16, 14, 19, 17, 14. There's going to be a couple of double hits in there. You know, you just want it to sound really rapid fire. So just keep that trem pick going while you're doing that pattern, and it's going to sound really cool. Okay, so let's just put that whole thing together nice and slow for you. Okay, now we get into our final unison run. Okay, so we start off with our first finger on the 14th fret of E and bending the 17th fret of B. Okay, so we're going to bend that B string, go back up to that 14th fret and do that 4 times. Now we have our measure of 3/4 here. Okay, so we're getting our pinky out onto the 19th fret of that high string, pulling off to 14, bending that 17th fret. Do that twice. Now pick that 14th fret on the high string again before repeating that measure of unison bending between the 17th fret on B and 14 on E. Okay, so a lot of just hanging around that 14th and 17th fret area here. Let's just put that whole unison thing together so far. Okay, now we move up half a step to fretting the 18th fret on B that we're going to bend and the 15th fret on the E string. Now do that 4 times. Okay, now we're going to go up a whole step to bend the 20th fret on B, 17th fret on the E string. Only do 2 unison bends there. Now we're going to go up another half step, bend 21 and the 18th fret on the high string, do 2 repetitions of that. Right? So just 2 beats. Going up another half step to the 22nd fret on B and the 19th fret on the high string, do 2 repetitions of that. Now bend the 22nd fret on the high string. And you can get some whammy bar vibrato on that. On the album, I imagine he was just trying to hit the pitch of E, since that's the key of the song that we're in. But he overshot that a bit. It's a 1.5 bend. It's more of an F that you hear. But, you know, between just being really aggressive with it and some whammy bar vibrato, it sounds really awesome. So that's the whole solo. It's actually fairly short. But now that we went through the whole thing, let's put it together with some scrolling tab for you at a slowed down pace. Now, immediately after the solo, we get into another interlude. So here's a playthrough of that. So the first riff in this interlude starts like this. Okay, so pretty easy to explain, a little bit harder to pull off though playing wise. It's fast down picking again, but we've got 2 E chugs followed by a F power chord stab. That's the power chord off of the first fret of the low E string. Okay, so we've got those 3 notes and we're going to do that 4 times. At the end, 2 more E chugs, and then 2 hits on the 2nd fret of the A string. Okay, so the whole thing nice and slow. Right, and remember to be counting those as 8th notes instead of trying to memorize how many times you're chugging on E or something like that. It's easier just to think 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, right? So there's 2 complete measures of 8th notes there. And now it's a 4 measure riff. The next 2 measures are the exact same. Okay, except for that last beat, instead of 2 hits on the 2nd fret of A, we just hop up and hit that B power chord. So power chord off of the 2nd fret of A. Okay, and that's the riff. We just play that riff twice. And like I said, it is pretty fast down picking. So that's the hardest part of the riff. Other than that, it's not too bad to pull off. But let's just put those 4 measures together. Okay, and now we get into the next 4 measure riff that repeats. So here I'll play the next 4 measures nice and slow. Okay, so we're starting off with a measure of chugging on E. Okay, just be aware of those 16th notes at the end. If you're counting again, you'll know where to put them. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and a 1. Okay, so just a quick little down, up, down at the end of that measure. Going into our next run. Okay, so that run starts off again, open 2, 3 on both the E and the A strings. Go up to the D string, open 2, 4, 5. Ending with the 3rd fret on the A string. Now the final run of this riff. Okay, so we're on that 3rd fret of the A string. Hit that 3 more times, right? A quick down, up, down to the 2nd fret, up to the 3rd again, then 5, 3, 2, and now come down to the E string, 3, 2. Okay, so that last little bit. Okay, let's put those 4 measures together. Okay, now this is a repeating riff again, and that repeats 4 times respectively, but on the 4th time we have a slightly different ending. Okay, so here's the 4th rotation. It goes like this. Okay, so as you can see, it's mostly the same. We start off the exact same. Okay, at the end of that first run there, though, instead of just hitting the single 3rd fret on the A string, we're going to hit that 3rd fret power chord. So hit the full C power chord there. And then from there, we repeat this next run, going to an E power chord there at the end of that run, and then just repeat that run again. And then we're into our main riff, which takes us into another verse and pre-chorus and chorus again before we get to our final outro. Okay, so there's that first guitar part. Now, before we move on into a slower playthrough with some scrolling tab, let's just talk about the harmony guitar that's in that section as well. And the harmony guitar is pretty brief. It only comes in on the 3rd and 4th rotations of this part. Okay, so they're in unison up to that point. But starting on the 3rd rotation, it goes like this. Okay, so they're in unison for a lot of this, just brief little harmonies here and there. So on the 3rd rotation of that 4-bar riff, we start off the same. Okay, so we've got that, start off that run the same, open 2, 3 on the E and the A, and then at that point, now we branch off with this 2nd guitar to a harmony that's a 3rd higher than the 1st guitar. So we're going to start on 4 and 5 of the D string, up to 2, 4 on G, and then down to 2 on the D string. Okay, so that's that first harmony. Now we stick on that 2nd fret of the D string. We're going to hit that 3 times, down, up, down, open D, back to the 2nd fret, up to the 4th fret, 2 open, and then down to 3-2. They're back in unison there for those final two notes and to start the repeat. Okay, so that first rotation through there where the harmony guitar is introduced, it goes like this, nice and slow. Okay, now the fourth rotation through this riff where we have the slightly different ending. Again, it starts off the same. And now we have the same harmony. But again, we hit the C power chord instead of just the single note that we had the last time around. Okay, and then the two guitars are back in unison for that part. That's no harmony there. But then in the final run, okay, we're going up to the D string, 5th fret. Play that with your pinky. 3 hits on that, down, up, down. Down to the 4th fret. Back up to 5. Now go up to the 2nd fret on the A string. Come back to the D string. 5, 4, 2. Open. And then there's a little hit on an E power chord there, but I don't hear the low string in that stab. I just hear the barred 2nd frets on the A and the D. Okay, and then that's on beat 1 where the other guitar takes off with the main riff again. Okay, so I'll just play through those couple of rotations with the harmony guitar for you. Okay, now that we've put that harmony guitar together, we'll slow it down. Actually, one more thing I want to talk about is that, when I put this section together, I just thought, hey, it's Metallica, let's downpick it all. But if you watch some live footage, they're rarely, if ever, exclusively downpicking this whole riff. And the first thing that they do is they introduce some hammers on the run going up. From the E, A, and D. So the first thing that they'll do is play it like this. Okay, so I don't know if you caught that, but there's a couple of hammers in there that they do live just to probably make it easier on their picking hand, I would imagine. But they start off down picking all of this. Now here, when we get to the A string, go open 2, hammering to 3. Okay, so you get rid of one pick there. And then again, on the D string, down pick the open 2 and 4, putting a little hammer there between 4 and 5. Right, so you can do away, that's how I see James play it a lot live, just doing away with a couple of those down picks in that run. So nice and slow again, that picking hand's going to look like this. And then a lot of the times too, they'll alternate pick this last little run. Right? Before they start the repeat again. So, feel free to alternate pick that too. Right? So I just thought I'd mention that because, down picking that whole section can be pretty daunting. And so they don't even really do it themselves. Like I said, I rarely see them, if ever, down picking that whole thing note by note like it is on the album. So that's how you can kind of play it like they do live. Now that we've talked about that, let's put the section together with some scrolling tab for you at a slow down pace. Okay, we've reached the end of this monster track, guys. We just have the final outro to discuss. And the riffing underneath the outro is the verse riff. So it's this riff. Okay, we're going to play that 4 times. And then there's a 1 measure rest followed by... Okay, so that's that G to F sharp power chord slide, followed by an E palm mute, and then an E power chord at the end. So that's the rhythm in the outro, and that's pretty straightforward. But I think that the curiosity of the section is the lead guitar that's going on throughout the outro. Now, I hate to disappoint, but if you're thinking that there's just a single note lead that we can learn and it will sound just like the album, then that's just not the case with this section for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's a backwards lead guitar that we're hearing on the album. So whatever they played, they reversed it, and that's what we're hearing. And second of all, it sounds to me like snippets of ideas that were then faded together and mixed to create the end product. So it's essentially something that was done in the studio and not really quite creatable ever again. You know, you would need the actual recording stems to really hear every note that was played, if those even exist. I've heard rumors that they're destroyed, that they don't exist, they were damaged or something. Don't know if that's true or not, but, you know, I think we just have to accept that this is what we're left with and just enjoy the piece of music that we have. So, you know, unfortunately, it's nothing that we can recreate and make it sound exactly like the album, but there's a number of ways that you could simulate what's going on in the outro. So I think a good way of doing it would be to, you know, you're going to want to click on some healthy delay. And I think a volume pedal would be helpful too, to simulate that backwards guitar, because when you reverse the guitar, like every note kind of fades in a bit, right? So if you had a volume pedal, you could kind of play around with simple little melodic phrases in E Dorian. And the only difference between E Dorian and E minor is the C. Any C that we play, we're going to play it as a C sharp. You got your Dorian scale, so nothing to be too scared about. But, you know, maybe ideas like this is something I would play. And then we've got that 1 measure rest, followed by that little riff with that ringing E power chord. And then there's a little bit more tacked on the end there too. Okay, so if you play ideas like that, that'll work. That's essentially what was going on, ideas like that, except then they're layered up and reversed, right? So, you know, approaching the outro like that, if you wanted to put a lead in there, I think would get you in the ballpark. And, you know, if you're just looking for something to play live to fill that space in, that'll work, you know, with a healthy delay going on. It'll sound pretty exciting still. And live, you know, Metallica, they don't play any lead there themselves. They just play the riffing and then it's done. Okay. So that's what's going on with the outro. I'm not going to bother breaking down those notes because I think that's a very, you know, artistic thing. You can probably create your own little melodic statements using even E minor pentatonic would work well, but, you know, get those color tones in there. That C sharp is prominent. I can hear that in the outro. So that's a good little note to have in there. But yeah, you know, just create something, have some fun with it. But that is the track, guys. So I hope you enjoyed breaking this down with me. It was, you know, a lot of work to get all of the parts put together, but it was fun. And now we know this monster track note for note. So I look forward to breaking another one down for you, and I'll see you soon.